Good evening, supervisors, staff, and guests. Please sign in on your tablets. Everybody signing in? I have nothing on my thing here.
How come Alice is
Huh? You got everybody? Everybody signed in? Okay, they are now, all right. Okay. How many do we have present? We got
14.
14. We have 14 present. We have 7 absent. So, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the agenda. All right, I have a motion by Supervisor Miller and a second by Supervisor Elliott. If there are no questions on the agenda, please vote your ballot. All right, we have 14 yes, 0 nay, 7 absent. All right, moving on. You have the minutes in your packet. Are there any questions on the minutes? If not, I need a motion for that. Supervisor Diedrich and a second by Supervisor McCann. All in, please vote your ballot. Again, 14 yes, 7 absent, so we still have a quorum. All right, any communications? And we have one gentleman in public participation, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Kevin Fisher. I am actually have been on the Zoning Board of Adjustment for 16 years. But I just want to give a shout out to 2 of the people that were on that committee that retired lately. Deb Reinhardt and John Cousin. They were both on the committee when I got on there, so they put in a lot more years than I've been on there so far. So, but I just wanted to give a shout out to those people with all the knowledge that they provided. Especially when I first got on there, I didn't know what was going on, and they helped walk you through things. Deb, she actually printed up a whole little, well, it's a whole page full, but she read that every time before the hearing started, so the people knew exactly how to participate. And when they voted me as chairperson, she actually gave me that and said, "Here, Kevin, I won't need this anymore." So I use it. I've only used it a couple of times now, but it just comes in very handy. So, and John just a wealth of knowledge as well, because he lives down by the lake and he's experienced a lot of these variances and stuff. But the best thing about John is he's just got this wit about him that it's just kind of neat to see. So. That was all I had. I just wanted to give a shout out to both of those people for their many years of service. So, thank you.
And thank you, Kevin. Yes,
Yep.
Both of them have been here a while. Okay, and special business. Chris Meuer, our Director of Planning, Zoning, and Land Information, will present information about data centers.
Hi everybody, my name is Chris Meuer, County's Planning, Zoning, and Land Information Director. So I was recently asked to give this presentation just on data centers. It's been a hot topic in the state for the last couple of years, and I know that a few of you have also gotten some questions too about them. Just want to kind of give you a general overview about that. So taking a look at our agenda for today then, we'll be talking about what a data center is, a little bit of the history of it, why Wisconsin is the current focus right now for data centers, looking at some challenges as well as concerns, just from a general land use perspective. Then taking a look at land use and zoning implications, as well as general zoning jurisdiction, and addressing data center questions that you may be receiving from the public as well. So starting off, really, what is a data center? So data centers, they're the physical features, facilities that organizations and businesses use to store, process, as well as transmit digital information. Looks like we lost the screen again. Further getting into it, really it's consists of routers, switches, firewalls, storage systems, servers, and really other networking equipment. We see a lot of GPUs and CPUs are the main focus on some of the larger type data centers now that are the main focus for development. Data centers have also really been in use since the 1950s. We see that a good example would be the movie The Imitation Game, if you're familiar with that. Really, it was a large mainframe computer that they had created for that particular situation, really used to process complex math equations to try and crack codes. So a little bit of the background on data centers. From a user perspective, whenever you send an email, you open an app on a smartphone, or you stream a movie, store files on the cloud system, or really use even social media to do a post, that information itself is being processed within a data center. So data centers, really, they're the core backbone of really the internet and really how that functions. Within the United States, currently, there are roughly 4,200 active data centers, and there are roughly 47 active data centers in Wisconsin. As of October 25, an additional 2,700 data centers were being proposed in the United States, and there were also an additional 43 data centers that are currently either in the planning phase or in production phase in Wisconsin. Taking a look at some of the examples that we have on the screen here, we see the 1970s and 1980s depiction. That would be an example of what's an enterprise level data system. This is something where you typically have it's either within a room or a small building. It's like a data closet from that perspective. They really grew when you had companies like IBM that were able to develop business grade servers. These enterprise facilities are typically owned or operated by a single company, and they use it for their internal services. This type of data center is still being used today. A good example of it locally here would be within the courthouse as well. We have an active data center. It's a large data closet. We've got smaller data closets that are also located throughout the courthouse as well. All of them would really be considered to be data centers. From our department's perspective as well, within the land information side of things, we have our own GIS servers too. So we would function really the same way as just a mini data center. Taking a look at our next examples on there, we've got some co-location facilities. Those really became prominent around the 1990s, early 2000s. So they really started to see when business and organizations really shifted from hosting services on-site to more off-site type locations that are owned by third-party companies to operate these facilities. Really, as the name suggests, these are really third-party companies that have multiple businesses. They're storing their information and data within this singular location. And they really became possible with the expansion of the internet and faster download and upload speeds, part of the .com era. So why would companies really decide to use facilities such as this instead of hosting their own data? When we take a look at the pros on their side of things, really it's the lower initial cost. They don't have to pay for servers. They don't have to buy all the equipment. They don't necessarily need to have the staffing as well to be able to function. It's easier to scale these type of facilities too. The infrastructure really is managed by that third-party company, so you don't have that expense. There's built-in redundancy. There's less cost to operate in general, and there better protection against severe weather situations or power outages from that perspective as well. Looking at some of the cons, though, there's really less control over the system itself and how it functions. They're typically more subscription-based systems right now is what we're seeing, which can be more expensive really in the long run. There's also dependency upon having an internet connection, so obviously your internet goes down, you lose access then to your potential files at that point. And it can also be more difficult to migrate platforms once you already have selected a vendor from that perspective, as their backend systems don't always work together. When we look at the third example we have on the screen here, this is more of a hyperscale facility. This is what we're seeing more so from the 2010s on to present. These are large-scale systems that are being designed more as a campus style, really with very large interconnected buildings taking up hundreds of acres. Several recent proposals in Wisconsin have been for this campus-style facility. They range from a few hundred acres to there's one that's over 1,000 acres in size. These facilities are often owned by the larger businesses. Think of your Amazons, Microsoft, Google, and they're needed to handle more cloud computing, AI, and just global internet functions as well. So why are we seeing more development in Wisconsin now? So taking a look at Wisconsin Act 2023, Wisconsin 2023 Act 19, which was the biennial budget bill, really created a data center sales and use tax exemption program for qualified facilities, really based on their total investment as well as the county's population. With this type of development, for Calumet County, an example here, because we've got just over 50,000 population, we'd be in the 50,000 to 100,000 category. So a facility, they would need to really invest over $100 million to qualify for this potential tax exemption in Wisconsin. And these incentives have really helped drive the more recent wave of development in data centers that we've seen the last couple of years here. The second reason why we're seeing more development is just the decreasing electric and municipal water demand across the state for the last 2 decades. So Wisconsin, we have an abundance of fresh water compared to other states, making it enticing for developers to want to come here. Decreasing usage rates and efficiency improvements in both water and electric utilities have also created additional capacity for utilities to take on higher demand uses. The argument being made is that since demand has been decreasing, utilities have needed to increase the cost for the average consumers to be able to keep up with infrastructure maintenance. So they also argue that because they're less able to perform facility upgrades, because they have a decrease in revenue, it's really leading to an aging infrastructure and a larger issue in general. With this type of development, though, comes the need for significant utility improvements above and beyond what typical use cases that we see. For example, the Port Washington data center needed the American Transmission Company to revamp their existing transmission lines to Forest Junction to the tune of about $1.2 billion to be able to meet their proposed energy demands, which is what we're seeing running through the county. Other issues that we see as well that's bringing it to Wisconsin is just lower land and operating costs compared to other states. Wisconsin's in the bottom third in the United States in terms of average price per acre for land. Cooler temperatures as well for half of the year can also improve cooling efficiency and reduce just the general operating costs for some of these facilities compared to warmer climates. Then taking a look at just our last point in here, proximity to major metro areas. So data centers are often sited near major metro areas to reduce latency. That's the delay between a user request and then a server response. So the further away that a data center is to the end user, the longer that the delay is. So they try to build them closer as well as spread them out into other areas throughout the country to be able to help reduce that latency that they're seeing. It also provides some additional redundancy. So if you've got large natural disasters or other events that occur, a single facility going down isn't going to shut down the entire network, essentially. They also do that too to try and help spread out water demand as well as just electric demand across the grid. Looking at concerns and challenges. So the primary one that we've been hearing within the last year or so really is just high electric demand and increased utility rates. I would say it's probably the number one concern that we've been seeing. At the state level, there were a couple of bills that were also proposed in January to try and address some of these issues. They were primarily focused on utility rates, water usage, and just cooling methods in general for these types of facilities, but both of those bills failed, and they did not progress at the state level. Even though the Public Service Commission does not directly regulate data centers, that's handled at the local level, they do still have control and authority to regulate utility rates. In April of this year, the PSC did approve modified We Energy's large load tariff, which was intended to ensure that very large data centers, including projects like the Port Washington data center, pay their own utility related costs rather than shifting them on to the end consumers. Similar action was also taken in May for an Alliant Energy project, and it shows that the PSC has a broader expectation that data centers and these types of facilities are going to be bearing their own costs when it comes to utility-related costs and projects really going forward. As part of these actions that they did, though, it's not an all-encompassing action. For the We Energies one, it did directly impact their large load tariff, which does impact all projects that they have going forward. But for other ones, it did not impact that. So it's really viewed on a case-by-case basis for how these are addressed going forward. But at least it's positive news coming from the PSC that they're willing to listen to constituents and see the issues at hand. Taking a look at our next issue, which is more water usage and cooling. So water usage is often considered one of the more highly debated and concerning topics surrounding data centers. Part of that's due to the wide-ranging reports that we see in water usage for the facilities. Each data center operates different based on how they're being utilized by their parent company and how they're being cooled. Data centers that primarily focus on data storage and cloud services compared to like AI services, they're typically using significantly less water from that perspective because they don't need it. They're not generating as much heat as what an AI data center would be generating. The Environmental and Energy Study Institute published an article in June of last year, which was taking a look at data center water usage. They found that a medium-sized data center similar to a co-location facility of 10 megawatts can consume roughly 110 million gallons of water annually, which is equivalent to annual water usage of approximately 1,000 households. A large data center, such as a hyperscale facility, can consume roughly 5 million gallons of water per day, or about 1.8 billion gallons of water annually, which is equivalent to a municipality of 30,000 people. So all of these factors are dependent upon the size in megawatts of that particular data center, and also the type of cooling methods that they're using. The Port Washington facility, for example, will be roughly 900 megawatts in size, which is a very large data center. It is a 672-acre facility. The developer's planning to use a closed-loop cooling system that will have a peak daily water usage of approximately 22,000 gallons of water, which is significantly less than the other examples that we were talking about. This is lower primarily due to it being that closed-loop style system, but the trade-off that you deal with the closed-loop system is then your energy needs are significantly higher. That's why we see in some situations, especially earlier on, they were developing more direct water applied or water evaporation style systems because water was cheap. So they would try to go with the cheapest electric style option that they had. They would use millions of gallons of water. The water would just evaporate, but their energy demands were significantly less. Because of public concerns and issues that we've been seeing over the last couple of years, a lot of them are trying to make that shift now towards the closed loop systems instead to try to address that. Part of the issues that we were also seeing with that was water discharge, which is also just a general concern. Those older systems using the evaporation cooling towers, water consumption was quite high in addition to that discharge rate. The rate typically had higher concentrated minerals in it. They also had other chemicals in it that were just a part of the maintenance process in general for these facilities, which are also obviously a fairly significant environmental concern if it's being discharged to a local waterway. The more advanced, more recent systems like the closed-loop system at Port Washington eliminates that particular issue. So it's really important when you start talking data centers to focus on the type of cooling methods that are being proposed for each particular facility, just to be able to determine what potential water impacts that it has. One of the other main concerns is always noise. Noise is more concerned with these facilities because they have constant cooling, large backup power sources in the event of an emergency. So data centers typically contain HVAC systems, chillers, cooling towers, pumps, and just numerous industrial fans. Combined, these sources produce just a constant background noise that can impact adjacent properties. Taking a look at just general background decibels in a rural residential area at night is typically around 20 to 30 decibels, while urban neighborhoods are usually around 35 to 40 decibels. Just for a point of reference, a normal conversation back and forth with someone would be around 55 to 60 decibels. So data centers, they typically aim for around 45 decibels. That's usually compatible with most municipal noise ordinance standards. You can also do conditional use standards to potentially try to lower that to match surrounding neighborhood noise levels as well. Backup generators are typically one of the mostly conditioned noise standards with data centers. Generators often exceed 100 decibels. and noise, so conditions are placed upon them for when, how often, and how long they can be tested for. Obviously, emergency situations, they would have to be running, but they can potentially try to mitigate issues by putting them in locations that it's not going to have as much of an impact on potential neighboring property owners as well. Just because of the noise concerns alone, it's one of the main factors on why data centers are usually viewed as more of an industrial style use. Taking a look at our fourth point here, which would be land space issues. So hyperscale projects can vary greatly in size, like we already mentioned. Port Washington project, roughly 670 acres. The Beaver Dam project is just over 500 acres. And after several expansions, the Mount Pleasant campus is over 1,300 acres in size. Developers are often looking for green space to be able to develop these cities, which typically includes existing agricultural lands. Farm in general is obviously a valuable commodity, but more so in agricultural communities. So this results in increased costs of remaining agricultural land, loss of productive farmland, and the fragmentation of existing farmland as well. Some municipalities are starting to push for minimum floor area ratios to help reduce density sprawl on these data center sites, which can then encourage them to try to build more vertically instead of just sprawling out across the landscape. The last point I wanted to bring up then was vehicle traffic and road wear concerns. These are often concerns with data center projects during the initial construction phase of the project itself. Facilities taking up hundreds of acres. You're talking thousands of loads of gravel, rock, and just concrete and materials in general being brought to the site for development. Obviously, this causes significant wear and tear on existing roads. Can be seen with the Port Washington project as material was brought in from dozens of quarries across the state, some of as far north as ones located in the town of Charlestown even, to be able to meet their demands. So these activities can significantly reduce just their overall life expectancy of regional roads, as well as roads adjacent to the project, and conditions are often put in place on them to try to address road damage and offset the cost to be able to repair them. Taking a look at land use and zoning implications. So due to the intensity of the use, most municipalities usually view data centers as an industrial use. Some municipalities have also gone the route of creating specific zoning districts for them to allow data centers. Municipalities have decided to go this route due to the changes that were made with the conditional use permit process as part of the 2017 Act 67. Act 67 limited the power of local governments limited local governments by requiring decisions to be based on substantial evidence. So if an applicant is able to meet all the particular standards and requirements that are labeled within the ordinance and that the committee places upon it, the committee is then required to grant that particular CUP. There's no discretion that's within that. They have to approve it. Map amendments or rezones for municipalities a little bit more discretion. If a proposed rezone does not match the comprehensive plan or is not consistent with surrounding land uses, it's easier for a municipality to be able to deny that rezone compared to a conditional use permit, which is why they're creating these additional zoning districts to put them in a separate category. Most of the land under county zoning is designated as agricultural, as well as being located within farmland preservation certified districts. Within those districts, the particular use for data centers is not actually a permitted use. The Department of Agricultural Trade and Consumer Protection provided this interpretation in one of the last conferences that we went to. They wanted to make that specific distinction that these are not utility grade facilities. These are a separate, usually a private entity that's coming in. So we have more discretion over what can be permitted and what cannot be permitted with these uses. Whereas utility facilities would end up going to the Public Service Commission for approval, and we have very limited control at the local level. Looking at other potential land use concerns, so while the county has several transmission lines and substations, the majority of our regional water usage is sourced from local groundwater. Another way to be able to restrict the location of data centers would be to require these facilities to be located on municipal water and sewer services. The majority of our towns, with the exception of the Forest Junction area, do not have a communal water supply. Requiring that such a facility be on sewer and water would help reduce the potential impact on groundwater drawdown on neighboring properties. And we're seeing that in some situations of municipalities requiring that. A lot of situations we see as well is that these developments, they may be occurring on fringe locations within townships, but they're being annexed by cities and villages. So in most cases, it's occurring within cities and villages because they have the services for these particular facilities to function. And then the last point on here, just the county's current general zoning ordinance has standards really in place to be able to address data centers. Signing a new data center would likely result in the conversion of several hundred acres of farmland, and based on our current comprehensive plan, it's really unlikely to meet the justifications needed to convert such a large tract of land for this type of use. This request would also likely not be approved by any of the townships under county zoning for failing to meet consistency requirements between the zoning ordinance as well as the comprehensive plan. So if a data center were to be approved through the rezoning process in our jurisdiction, the use is still not listed as an approved use in our zoning ordinance. The county zoning ordinance is a permissive-based ordinance, which means that unless the use is specifically listed in the ordinance for that district, the use itself is not approved at all. It's not permitted. There's potential option in this situation where they could go with a use not listed section that we have, but these are viewed on a case-by-case basis and need to meet use-based consistency requirements to be even considered. Based on our current language, I feel like we're in a good position to be able to address data centers. Looking at general zoning by jurisdiction, a little bit of what we talked about, just the general zoning ordinance at the county level. The standards that I mentioned would be in place within the towns of Brillion, Charlestown, New Holstein, and Woodville. I know the text is a little bit small on the map there, but those would be the communities that are in green. The communities that are in yellow, those would be ones that administer their own general zoning requirements and are not under the county's general purview or jurisdiction either. So for townships that are not in county zoning, the question will be based really on their current zoning ordinances and their comprehensive plan. So most of them did participate with the county in our comprehensive plan update. We did identify some areas as transitional in the comprehensive plan, which could include industrial development potentially. Most of those areas are not large enough to support a hyperscale data center or would conflict with the surrounding land uses and zoning districts in that area. The town of Stockbridge is the only municipality that does not have zoning in the county, so there's little that could be done from a regulatory perspective to be able to regulate a facility such as this. I know that moratoria were another discussion point that has come up recently too. Enacting moratoria has been one of the main ways that municipalities in the state have tried to put a temporary pause on data center development. It's a practice that can be used to delay the process so municipalities have time to come up with zoning standards for a set period of time. But based on our current standards, like I said, I feel like we're in a fairly good position and don't need to enact a moratorium at this time. Also, a moratorium enacted at the county level would only be applicable in the municipalities where we currently have zoning jurisdiction. So like I said, the 4 municipalities on there is the only place where it would be even applicable. All the other municipalities, the cities, villages, towns of Brothertown, Chilton, and Rantoul, if we do a moratorium, it would not be applicable in those locations as we do not have jurisdiction there. So each municipality, they would have to come up with their own moratorium language if that's the direction that they want to go to be able to enforce that. And then our last point here is just addressing data center questions in general. So a couple of key points just to focus on is don't overpromise county authority on projects just when talking with constituents. Like we said, the county only has general zoning in 4 of our 8 townships. So our authority is really limited from that perspective. We can't enact a sweeping ordinance to be able to limit something like this or to approve something like this just because we don't have the authority to do that in those areas. Another key point is just commitment to process transparency. So if a project is in an area under county jurisdiction, we have specific processes that are outlined in ordinance to be able to be transparent, as well as require public hearings for the public to engage and interact with the process itself. If someone does have a particular question in mind, they're more than welcome to contact the department. We're more than happy to answer any potential questions that people have, address any concerns that they have. One of our main focuses is just to help educate the public so that they're more understanding of what our requirements, what our ordinance language says, and all that, just to be more transparent with the public in general. And just a general statement too that we have on here is just because the county is a mixture of county zoned areas and municipalities that have their own authority, there's not one single answer that for every proposed site. Residents really deserve a clear explanation of which body would review a specific land use issue, what other permits would be required, and where the public can participate in that particular process. So residents are really urged to directly contact their local municipalities if they have any questions about a particular project or really what that review process looks like, because it's on a case-by-case basis, and it may be a different municipality than what they think of would actually regulate it. So.
Are there any questions? Please press your request to speak. Brian, Supervisor Kolb. You had a question? No. Okay. Supervisor Machewski.
I just wanted to clarify, so we currently have one in our county?
So we have the one that is actually here in the courthouse. There's also one that is in Harrison that is more of a, I wouldn't say quite a co-location style, but it's a larger facility. Those are the only ones that I'm aware of. You know, obviously most businesses have some form of that, but it's their own personal use. The only active larger one would be the one in Harrison.
Okay, and that one, based on your presentation, would have been approved by the village of Harrison, and the county wouldn't have had any say in that?
Correct. Yep.
Do you have any specs on like kind of what they use at that facility?
We weren't involved in any of that process, so we're not really privy to any of the information that they had. It would be whatever they have publicly available. Like I said, we just weren't involved in that one.
Thanks for the presentation. I really enjoyed learning about it.
Yep.
Supervisor
Matt.
Wynn.
Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate the detail. Do you have a quantifiable sense of scale for the current existing active data centers throughout the state and how that compares to some of the hyperscale projects that are being proposed? I assume we don't have anything hyper yet in the state.
We
Still
do.
kind of
Yeah, we actually have
active and
several.
online.
Yep, there's the Port Washington one, which that's the 560-ish acre size one. There's also the Mount Horeb, Mount Pleasant, Madison area. That one is 1,300 acres in size. So that's I think that one is over 2,000 megawatt capacity, which is an extremely large facility that we would typically see. The next largest one is that Port Washington one, which is less than half that size in capacity, and that's still considered to be a hyperscale facility. The image that I had up, I'll bring that up here for you guys. This is actually a rendering of what the Port Washington facility looks like. It's the 4 different core areas, different buildings. That's more that campus style. That's that hyperscale facility.
Do you know, other than the hyperscale, what the kind of megawattage is throughout the rest of the state? I mean, is that one in Mount Horeb twice the size of everything else? You know, I know that hyperscale is really on another level. Is it something along those lines?
I would say that facility itself probably makes up 2/3, if not 3/4 of the overall capacity, just in data centers in Wisconsin in general. Just because, like I said, the next largest one is not even half that size in capacity. And those are really some of the major ones. The Beaver Dam project, I believe, is even half the size of the Port Washington one as well. They're starting to make that shift towards some of these larger ones in our area. It just hasn't been as common here. I know West Virginia area, they're more considered to be kind of like the main hub for data center development out there. So they've got significantly more development going on over there.
Supervisor Miller.
Yes, my connection's not working, so thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I have some questions. Being from the elder group, the DNR back in the 70s and 80s was all concerned about digging too close to navigable streams. You take about the Hayden Swamp, they did everything to keep the farmers from plowing too close. And navigable streams, I even had one. They tried to make mine a navigable stream, which is a mud hole. It was a pasture land that I bought with a home at, and it's not. So I dug a pond in 2002. But from the 70s to 2002, things really changed. Why did the DNR now go to sleep and let these people take navigable streams down at Beaver Dam and Port Washington? People that live there, they've been living there 40, 50 years, they closed off navigable streams and are building on it. Other concerns, I've been to some of these demonstrations and these information meetings. Other concerns are, why aren't they building the buildings higher to take less land? Same thing should have been with high schools ever since the 80s. You got fat kids running around school, but they don't even have to go up and down stairs, okay? You could put in elevators, okay? All right, the other concerns are, you need to let people know. Town of Greenleaf kicked them out a year and a half ago. Kewanee kicked them out a year ago. Because I've been kind of busy with my wife's funeral and stuff, I don't know what Wrightstown's doing, but there was pretty good opposition there, and I sent them some documents of people of this. And the other thing is Canada going nuts with this too or not? Do you know?
I haven't heard anything
I have
just
heard
on
they're
the
not.
Canadian side of it,
I've
no.
also heard that they're not doing it in Africa or South America or Australia. Why here? Somebody is making a mint out of stuff. The last part is, I have some farmer friends that own acres in Brown County. 3 or 4 years ago, they weren't saying they were buying the land for data centers, but they came around, and both these farmers said, when you connect everybody around here, all the farmers, including my 360 and my 180, then I'll come and consider selling to. They never got more than 2 landowners out of probably about 22 or 24 to commit. So they washed. They never said it was about data centers, but the deception was there, okay? So we need to stop it. Back when I was in planning and zoning last year, I tried to get a proclamation through that we keep them out of Calumet County for the interest of a good wholesome area. People that come from Chicago, they love it up here going north. You know what I mean? You're rubbing that all out when you're letting them build these data centers. So I say stand up, opposition. Veterans are all against us all across the country. And they could care less about a lot of veterans. 440,000 in California alone choose to be homeless. They don't want nothing to do with the government. Thank you for hearing me, Madam Chair.
I have a question.
Sure.
I've read many studies about the shortage of water as it comes into the future. Are these data centers recycling their own water, or where are they going to get all the water that's demanded for their operation? Do you know that?
Yeah, so a lot of them are going more towards that closed loop style system, which that closed loop system is using significantly less water than what some of the older ones were. Where I said some of the older, larger ones were using, millions of gallons a day. The Port Washington project itself is using roughly 22,000 gallons, and they say that's not even part of their cooling. That's just part of their general operations because they have almost 400 employees a part of it. They're saying that they're not adding anything directly from a cooling perspective, water input to that for the Port Washington project.
I know there's a lot of concern there about the
Right.
water usage, and I certainly would be concerned because in many dry areas, even in our area, water is really scarce.
Yep, and that's why they've started to make that shift more towards that. Like I said, you'd end up dealing with those trade-offs then because now you're using more energy because it's that closed-loop system compared to using more water, just with the methods that they use now.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. More information. I've been on sites in Texas where they're laying the pipe. I know people that are responsible for laying so much length of pipe, so many sizes of pipe. They have certain number of wires that go in. And I asked, how do you get the wire to go through when you got these 200 feet of pipe? They say you take Walmart bags and a compressor, you tie a string to the Walmart bag, suck it through, and then they tie the wire on it and run it through with a rope. That's how they're building them. 900-acre site I was on last summer about this time of year. I got pictures. They go down 8-10 feet. They level everything where they connect the pipes through, and then they come along and everything's there. They throw some rock on it, and then they cement 4 feet high by 6 feet wide, these ditches, and then they put it back a cover on it. But all that water that is run through there to do that, that's what I'm saying. They're closing up navigable streams. And guess what? Texas has no lakes. There are no lakes in Texas. If you play a little bit of trivia, you'll find that out real fast. There's no lakes in Texas. All they got's the ocean. So that is really a problem there. And we've been dry around here, haven't we? The little blessing we got this morning, I was biking at 3:30 this morning. Thank you. I think my wife sent it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Miller. Any other questions? All right. Supervisor Machewski?
Yeah, sorry, just to follow up on your point, is that accurate from your understanding that there were changes where I want to use your terms there, that streams are being, I guess, allowed to be converted that weren't in the past?
That's more on the DNR side of regulation. There's been some, I would say, significant changes just in the DNR just over the last decade or so, more from conservation to development. So it could be something that they're doing, but again, that's all in the DNR's purview. I haven't seen it directly myself, but I've heard similar things that Joe has been mentioning as well.
And then I guess I don't know if this is kind of in your area or not. Obviously, we've talked about that the public can get together and say, we don't want this in our community. I'm sure that the companies would say that there's a lot of benefits to having these and we need these to further technology and everything else. If you have somebody who is maybe against having this in their community or is worried about the scale, is there anything that you would recommend the average person do to take, I guess, personal action, or is it something that's such a global scale? Like, for example, right, like I can drive an electric car, but if a billionaire is taking their jet every single day, what kind of personal impact am I making? Would you say it's something on that scale, or are there actionable things everyday people can do?
Yeah, I would say it's so integrated within our current system now just because really it's the backbone of how the internet itself functions. So, I mean, you need data centers so that a certain extent, but it's been more the development recently just with AI tools and everything else that is why we've been seeing this more major shift. So that's part of it. Use of AI obviously then spurs additional buildings being constructed, additional data centers. So that's something, if you're not interested in using AI or you don't want to use it, that's a particular approach that individuals could take from that perspective. But like I said, I don't know if there's really a large, one thing that could particularly be done for use cases like this.
Thank you. And then just one last clarification. So if they're using less water and using more energy, I would assume that's a non-renewable source of energy then that they're pulling?
So we've been seeing a couple different examples. I know that one of the nuclear power facilities that, which one is that on Michigan that they had shut down? Yeah, they are talking about starting that one back up again. And with that one, they would actually put a data center on the front end before the energy actually gets put out to the grid. So it actually would power the data center first, and then the energy would go out to the grid because it would be using so much energy. There's been a few other cases, one in Iowa, I believe it was a Google facility there, that they were also planning to start up a nuclear facility too to be able to power a data center. So they're taking a couple different approaches to be able to do it.
Supervisor McCann?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious, Chris, is there a design or a size or a type of data center that you could see being appropriate for Calumet County? I mean, you talked a lot about huge data centers and other things. Is there a business that could move to Calumet County that would attach itself to a data center that we would find, fitting in with the landscape and with the general population?
Yeah, I mean, more like the typical co-location size that we see that is more around the 10 to maybe 100 megawatt capacity, where maybe we're talking under 100,000 square feet for some of these facilities. Even like the Harrison example too, how many people actually knew that was a data center that was there? Not many people really know that. So more of that particular size probably fits more for our landscape and makes more sense with some of the models that they're trying to do too, where they're promoting to have more facilities so that you have more redundancy, you've got more protections from, natural disaster events. That may be something that is more palatable, I think, just to the general public, even not just Calumet County, but just Wisconsin in general.
Yeah, and I think that's one of my concerns is that you create a kind of a boogeyman nature to these things that may or may not be appropriate for what we need in our county to develop.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Oh, all right, one more time, Mr. Miller.
Chairman, addressing the water issue, I picked up articles from down as far as Dodgeville papers and stuff. When they clean up these areas, take away navigable streams, be glad that the water will come back. With the tungsten, the tangy, and graphite that comes back, it will kill the sheep. It will kill the horses. It's all ground fine. It can't blow in the wind because the stuff attacks the ground. Okay. So where do the poisons go? The air, the water, or the ground, okay? The Amish have a very strong upfront on this. You won't see them in Ohio or Pennsylvania, even in parts over like Wittenberg. The Amish are on top of this. You're not coming here. And they're getting some respect, and they're letting people know. So if we continue to drag our feet and don't do something, as I advocated 4 months ago, ban them from here, they'll fold up and go away. But their top dogs will always change wherever they're from, China or Korea or wherever they're from. They'll always change, and they'll come attract you because they're the ones that are making the money, and they're ruining our local landscapes. Enough is enough is enough. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Wayne.
Yep, just one more. So if they're moving towards more closed-loop systems instead of the evaporative cooling leads to that going to the air because of the phase change from water to moisture to air and all that. Does that lead to the closed-loop system releasing more heat into the ecosystem via the water because of that cooling system instead of the air? Does that have some other unintended effects as well?
Yeah, I think that's one of the main factors that they end up dealing with. Same thing with the evaporative cooling too. They end up dealing with what's called blowdown, which is where they end up cleaning out some of those systems because they're dealing with that high concentration now. You've gone from having, say, 100 gallons. The evaporation would take up roughly 75 gallons of that, and you've got 25 gallons that are remaining. And that is more concentrated minerals and just everything else that's involved in it. So really, you've got the trade-off, and with both of these particular systems, which one's better. I don't know if you're looking more at the water conservation side, obviously the closed loop style systems, but you've got that trade-off just in energy consumption and just general heat output too.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. A lot of questions, a lot of concerns. All right. The next on is Todd Romenesko, our county administrator, and he's going to present how county finances shape Wisconsin human services.
Good evening. So this is intended to be one of about 3 sessions that we're going to have with the county board in an effort to provide some education regarding overall county budgeting, hopefully prior to your November action on the county board vote for the budget. So we've heard over the years from board members that it's complex, it's confusing. So the finance director, Mike Stegbauer, and I have put together some different trainings to provide that information, allowing you some time to kind of digest this section by section, and hopefully also clear up some of the confusion that some of your residents have had regarding tax bills and tax rates and things like that. So I'm hoping this will be informal. So you'll just raise your hand. We will forego the select the button for now, so it could be interactive as questions come up. As I was preparing this, I was thinking about in 2003, when I was the deputy director for human services. In that fall of that year, I prepared a budget that I thought was a strength-based budget, data-driven, responsible for the county citizens. And that was in preparation for 2004. In January of 2004, that year, we had 2 juvenile delinquents. Some board members will remember when this happened. 2 juvenile delinquents that were on our caseload threw a large rock through a speeding vehicle, and the judge dealt with them harshly and sentenced them to Lincoln Hills. And for a county budget for Lincoln Hills at the time, I can't even tell you for sure what the amount was for one youth to be sentenced to Lincoln Hills. That was all paid by county dollars. Today, that's $468,000 that the county pays out of our tax levy for the one youth. And I found myself that year in front of the county board, never having done that before, because my director conveniently was on a trip to Ireland when I needed to ask for money, because we knew the budget was going to be blown. Over time, we prepare for one of those kids, maybe, but to try to prepare for youth that are unknown to us at times to commit a crime and be sentenced doesn't make any sense. So it's very important for county board members to understand the impact that that has on county finances, things that are in our control, things that aren't in our control. And nobody did anything wrong in that instance, except for the kids, right? We prepared a budget that was responsible. Our staff followed the law. We could arguably, the court made the right decisions, let's say, by these 2 youth, by sentencing them. But the budget was blown. So it's important for human services directors and county board members across the state to understand how that works, why that is, and if there's anything we can do about it. So the objectives for today, or tonight, I'm assuming none of you would consider yourselves experts in human services funding or county funding, right? So there's always a little something to learn. Yeah. So we will have an understanding of Wisconsin County revenue structure, which is important across all departments. We'll identify pressures that are unique to your human services departments. And we'll explore strategic responses, like what are you going to do about it, and why we need to do something about it. And because there was such interest in the data center, time. I'll try to keep this high level, but I won't spend a ton of time on a lot of these slides. So why do we face the structural mismatch is what I decided to call that for this presentation, that it's not a management problem. What I should tell you is this will also be in prime time at the WCA conference. So I've been asked to present this at a session on Monday, so you can feel free to skip, or if you want to really get a deep dive, you can come to that one as well. So I like to say that it's not a management problem, always. It's not always a management problem. There are certain things that we can do to try to manage expenses in certain areas within human services budgeting, but we live within this structural contradiction. We live within levy limits, we live within these mandates, and it's important for us to know that we didn't create it. We can only manage so much within it. But what do we need to do to be in front of this as far as state legislature goes and in front of county boards? So I do this for human services directors across the state. I've been at county boards in Eau Claire, Langlade, Lincoln, I forget where else, because county human services directors say, I don't know what to do to educate my board. They look at me like I need to be within my budget and say, how can you possibly come to a county board meeting without a balanced budget? So this is why we need to talk about it and make sure that we all understand. So the structural mismatch. So on the costs and demand side, some of this will be familiar to some of you. Service demand increases. So that's not just unique to human services. That's in other areas. The public demands certain things of us, of counties. But we say that our client acuity is rising also. And I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And I have seen far higher level of acuity with our patients than I've ever seen before, much more difficult. Placement costs are accelerating. So we experience inflation in human services, counties, so of course providers. Providers have to pay people. Providers have to build buildings. So the inflationary impact, they pass on to us, of course. We pay for placements for individuals within our human services departments that we're required to pay for. Workforce costs are climbing. You know that. You voted on budgets, wondering about healthcare costs, advocating sometimes for competitive wages so we can maintain the workforce that we have, but it costs us money to do so. Crisis response. So human services crisis response is expanding. We're required to do more in crisis than we had been before. Our mandates are growing. So I spent a little bit of time with the Health and Human Services Board with some new members going over just what mandates are and all of the mandates that we're responsible for. And if I would have done the same thing 10, 15 years ago, there would have been fewer. So they are growing, and we talk about the unfunded mandates that exist within human services, and it's a reality. And I actually do have that same mandate and revenue document because I think I've been doing it for about 15, 20 years. But there are more of them that exist. The revenue authority is flat. So those who have been on the board a long time or spent some time paying attention to what our levy limits are, our levy is tied to net new construction. So you'll hear that, see that presented multiple times. You get no more funding, right? You're not going to be able to tax for more on the levy. That's it. It's net new construction, so it's flat. Shared revenue, incremental growth. So we did have some progress on shared revenue in 2023. I testified with Jonathan Delagrave, the county exec from Racine, and the county exec from Winnebago, John Damel at the time, pushing for legislation to pass the shared revenue change. And we got it, but honestly, when we were there, we were talking to ourselves saying, well, this is all we're going to get right now. We need more, but we're going to take this little step with the legislature because it's better than nothing. And it's tied to inflation a little bit. But I think for Calumet County last year, or for this budget, shared revenue because of that bill may be increased for us by about $30,000 to $40,000 in our total budget. State allocations are categorical and slow. And what I mean by that is the state ties specific things to our funding, requires us to spend it only on this, which then, as you can imagine, ignores where maybe some of our increases are coming from. Medicaid, I won't get into the difficulty around Medicaid. It's an opportunity, certainly. We have had some wins. That's a revenue that we can try to generate. But there's risk with it. And county boards around the state are leery of trusting their leadership in human services because a lot of times what it takes to get Medicaid dollars is staff. And county boards are conservative, saying, okay, so you're losing money, but you want to add staff, when the county administrator is standing in front of us saying staff is the most expensive thing that we have. So it doesn't really always make sense to an elected official, right? So it's opportunity to build those revenues, but it's a risk that people have to be willing to take. And there's no stabilization mechanism. There's nothing that addresses when we have things that go up, our costs go up. There's no revenue to generate to really stabilize in emergencies such as the Lincoln Hills placements that I described. So the revenue tools in counties and why they fall short. So here's the brief history lesson of county funding in Wisconsin, if you didn't already know. In the 1990s, which is when I started in Calumet County, we had rising property tax era is what I decided to call it on here because it's true. Everything we did was tied to the property tax because that's all we had. So county boards were able to spend what they need, respond to urgent needs within human services by taxing your property taxpayers. Now that was very, I would say, varying across the state depending on the county board, right? So some county boards were willing to put more money in certain things and some were not. Some were choosing to do that in law enforcement and sheriff's office, and some were willing to do it in the human services area. But regardless, it was all on the property taxpayer. I list things here, you know, that there were no statutory caps, so we could fluctuate based on need. Flexibility existed for us within the overall county budget, so we didn't have to do things that way. We didn't have to send unreasonable amounts to the taxpayer because you guys have to run for office. So it still needed to be somewhat reasonable, but it did exist with the flexibility for us to respond to those high needs. The 2000s is when levy limits started to emerge. So the state started looking at this saying, the state of Wisconsin puts too much on the property taxpayer. We have to address that in some way. So they started putting caps on what we could generate for revenue and didn't change the mandates. So the state was intended to fully fund county human services. There's nobody around probably that really remembers that that was the way it all started, is that these certain dollar amounts, not just the levy, but contracts that they had with counties, was intended to fully fund placements like Lincoln Hills, was intended to fully fund anything we needed to do with our human services, and they began realizing that they couldn't afford it as a state. So they started passing that on to the counties. Shared revenue was created in the 2000s as well, and it exists, but it doesn't really move with anything. It doesn't grow with inflation, the 2000s version. And then in 2011, we had Act 10, so some of you remember that, were affected by that professionally or otherwise. Certainly I remember that. It became a time when the county had much more flexibility around unions and how we paid staff and what we were required to do or what they were required to do, but it allowed for some flexibility, but it also created a completely different competitive workforce. And in 2023, as I just described, the shared revenue reform occurred. But it also came with some categorical restrictions. I don't know how many of you have actually really looked at the impact of the shared revenue reform bill in 2023. You don't have to be embarrassed to not raise your hand, but I know that you were all supportive of it, right? Because it gave us some money. But what it also did was it created all kinds of requirements for us that said, well, you're only going to get this money if you agree to take over a service from somebody else. So it would require us to, for example, if we wanted to do public health for the city of Appleton, we would qualify for additional revenue under the shared revenue reform. Do you think the city of Appleton's going to want to give us public health? No. And so we hear oftentimes from our state legislature, why aren't you taking advantage of it? Why aren't you taking advantage of it? Like this was the thing that was going to save us all kinds of money. Like we could give our services to somebody else to run, and they could get money, or we could take it and run it. So it's, in theory, it's not a bad idea, but it's still your taxpayers' money. So there's a parochial element to that that's always going to exist unless we do something drastically different. But that did not answer everything that we needed answered. Property tax limits, levy limits, the core constraint. This just shows you, and you've heard it from me year after year after year, Calumet County's typical levy growth, because we are growing. We are one of the lucky ones, and we're still only at 2.5, 2.8. One lucky year, I think I can remember, we were at 3%. So that's as much as we're going to get, and that's on a really good year. Our neighbors last time did not fare as well. I think they were less than 2% around the lake with Fond du Lac and Winnebago. Disappointing because it's all tied to the net new construction. This is important because, of course, our health and human services cost of inflation is closer to 7%. So revenue flat, costs are going up. The levy relief for crisis years is 0%. So it doesn't matter if we're in crisis, doesn't matter if we have high costs. Those revenues are not going to adjust with what we have going on. I wanted to make sure you saw the inflation versus the net new construction. I do put this in your budget packet every year because it's just an important visual for you to understand that the county net new construction, that orange line, is better, that's why I'm saying we're one of the lucky ones, than the gray line on the bottom, which is your overall Wisconsin net new construction, which is flat. You look at the blue line, those are annual CPI. And the reason I like and hate this slide is because people misconstrue the ending, the 24-25, as if, oh, that gap's gotten smaller. It really hasn't. The hurt on CPI occurred 20, 21, 22, 23. It's not growing as fast, but the impact is still there on our expenses. We didn't get less expensive. I mean, things aren't drastically going down. I know everybody's excited about gas prices, but we don't all of a sudden say, oh, we're paying less for health insurance, or we're paying less for our employees, or we're paying less for providers. That's not the way it works. So this is just a very good visual for everybody to understand. Levy limits are not sustainable when your human services department is mandated to provide service. Shared revenue and state aids, incremental gains, structural gaps. So this is just another way to show you that the levy shared revenue growth, small. We made some minor gains with the shared revenue reform. That's what you see in 23-24. But your HHS expenditures continue to grow beyond the revenue amounts. I wanted to put sales tax on here. It's not as relevant for Calumet. But across the state, if you don't know this, most counties that had sales tax, that have had it forever, pay for operations. I would tell you that's not a sustainable model. It's not a good idea, but they did it many, many years ago out of need because the levy limits occurred. They were already beyond what they could pay for. Calumet, I'll give all the credit to everybody that I inherited it from, had a fiscally conservative board that really maintained a very good balance for us to come in and then make sales tax only about capital projects, not about operations. So this is not intended for you to think, oh gosh, now he's thinking operations should be paid with sales tax money. That's not it at all. But it is the reality across the state, except for the few of us that were around the lake, and Waukesha, I think, was one that didn't. They are in an advantage, per se, over us, because they're taking those sales tax dollars and applying them as they need, because it grows with inflation. You've seen our sales tax number. It's pretty good. But this is a reality across the state and other counties that human services face, and county boards have to decide how to apply those sales tax dollars, because they actually will pay for people, positions, placements, things within HHS. So there's a structural divide there as well. I talked a little bit about Lincoln Hills. It's important for you to understand the mandates at a very high level. I just need you to know all of the things that you see on this slide right now are what we pay attention to on a regular basis, because these will break the budget. We may come in like I did in 2003 and think we have a good plan. We have one placement for Lincoln Hills and other placements that are necessary, but we don't control where people move, where they decide to live. So a very expensive youth or an adult could live in Fond du Lac, Manitowoc, Winnebago, Sheboygan, Milwaukee, and move here, and they are now our financial responsibility. And I never even knew they were existed. How many people remember Ray Brock, County Board member? Ray Brock. Ray Brock was the one at that meeting in 2003 that said, and he was a good friend of my dad's. He pointed at me and he said, "You should have known. With today's technology," now this is 2003, okay? With today's technology, you should have known that that was going to happen. And I said, based on what, the actuarials that we have trying to help us determine, we're a county, we're not an insurance company, right? But it just showed me that we have a lot to teach. And to say that, well, I can't even predict who's going to move here. And we have had that within the last couple of years, where we've had very expensive people relocate to Calumet County, and they're on your dime. And you're obviously not going to say, well, you should move back or find a way for it. We don't play those games ethically or morally. We're going to provide the service that's mandated, but we don't control where they move. So it becomes a very tricky situation. Yeah. So we also don't control the courts. You know, the courts make decisions. I got the call, I think it was last week. One of our youth committed a serious crime. The district attorney's office called and said, well, I want you to hear it from me directly that I am going to recommend that we blow your budget because there's a placement that needs to occur at Lincoln Hills with a young man and probably his brother, so that's two, possibly. And we don't have any control over that. And it's hard for us to go before a judge and recommend something else in certain situations when it's just dangerous for the individual to be in the community. We try, but we don't have control over the court's decision. I tell that to the judge often. I said, you're the judge. We don't have to like your decisions, but we have to live by them, follow them, and in some instances we have to pay for them as well, financially. Mental health cases, inpatient costs aren't as bad, but there's a funding gap for crisis. Law enforcement is affected by human services if funding is an issue and staffing is an issue, because they're the guys that are out there with our mental health patients, assessing for safety, waiting for us to find placements in hospital settings that are virtually impossible to get if they're unwilling to take an individual. Workforce economics, that I think you're familiar with. Healthcare costs drive what we do. This year was the first year that I think I've been doing this job that it's been a 0% increase, which, I mean, saves us a lot of money. We didn't get a reduction, but it's better than the 10, 12, 15% increases we've been experiencing. This is out of the Green Book. So I've showed this. So if you haven't seen the Green Book yet, you will. Everybody will get one. We talk from some of the items within the Green Book at budget time. I have shared this slide with county boards when I've presented human services funding. This one's probably really hard for you to see, but I rearranged it with the permission of Forward Analytics, who puts the book out. I called and said, I want to rearrange the slide because I want to show lowest per capita to highest per capita. Because every time I've gone to a county board where they've been struggling with human services financing, they want to know, why does Racine have it all figured out and only pays $161 per capita? And what's wrong with Menominee when it's $799 per capita? So this only tells you one. Yeah. James is like, yeah, right. You were there. Exactly. Yes. So it doesn't tell the whole story, right? We're always in the middle. We're about 387. I don't know what we are in here. 378 transposed. 378 on this one. So this just tells a little bit of a story. It doesn't tell the whole story. You understand that with data of all sorts, right? So different things within tell a different story, but what jumps out at board members or what jumps out at the public is, how can this be less money? How can this be less expensive? And across the state, human services accounts for about 1/3 of the entire county budget, county by county. It's the most volatile and the most expensive thing that you have going. And it's seriously affected by how counties are funded in the state of Wisconsin. And it's important for you just to have an understanding of that and then what we can do about it. Here's something you see this one every year from me at budget time. And I show this to human services directors because I think sometimes human services gets a bad rap because of mandates. You can set a budget for the sheriff's office and they can pretty much keep it, stick to it. Because it's really mostly staff. I mean, we made the decision on the jail, and that's an expensive venture, but we knew it. Certain fixed costs are going to go with that. But their staffing, unless there's significant overtime, but that's typically because they're lower staffed overall. So they have to make up for it in corrections or on patrol. But it's a pretty fixed amount. But typically, they cost you more on the total tax levy. So they're at $8.5 million. Health and Human Services here is $5 million. That's assuming that HHS doesn't jump up another $1 million above budget because of those Lincoln Hills placements. So what happens? Yeah, go ahead. Yes. It's now $1,268 per day per child or per youth. The state legislature, in this budget, wanted to at least double that rate, which would have busted many counties financially. So when our legislators come here, like Ron Tussler, and I tell them, do you realize what that's doing? Because that's a state facility. So they're paying themselves, but we're paying them the additional rate. So Governor Evers vetoed it, thankfully, and kept us at the rate we're at now. That's the same amount we were before. Their costs are up. They, just like anything else, right? It's dangerous. They've had some major crimes occur with staff and against staff. So physical, I know of a man that worked there that had a brain injury because of being attacked by a youth. So it becomes not so popular to say we're not going to pay for the higher costs, but we won this one. If we didn't have to have them to that extent and the state could figure out how to do it, it would be better. We've pushed back about why are we paying for it. We've pushed back about you need to pay for, meet us halfway, pay for more. And this is all funded, and this is in the weeds a bit, but it's all funded by youth aids, which was supposed to pay 100% of our costs. Never has since I've been here, and it is the worst funding that we've ever received as counties for corrections type placements. It's just not grown. The state's unwilling to move it up in any way. Did you have a question? That's been going on probably for 12 years or more. Yep. Well, so we were slotted to have one in our area in Brown County, and then Brown County got us all together and said, okay, who's willing to do this and participate? Well, they wanted us to pay for it. And I was one that was unwilling, and then eventually Brown County became unwilling to do so. I think the intent of that was to get the youth in facilities closer to their homes. Because connection to their parents and their family and improving things, as you know, gets them home sooner and changes behavior, you would hope. The real intention of Lincoln Hills is safety and containment. And once you get beyond the safety and containment need, what are you going to do? They have to go back out into the community. So it requires a family of some sort, and if they don't have a family, a placement of some sort. But it's not really moved, because it takes a lot of money to do that. Yeah, that's what I think she was indicating in the southern part. So there's more to be done on that. I am really reluctant to be overly supportive of county funding state institutional placements. I mean, building a state institution that we're going to have to pay for doesn't make any sense to me. If they were to fix the funding model, or if they were just to build it in our area for the right reason, then I think we could get behind it. But I can go back and show the chart again, under completely flat revenue, it makes no sense for them to look to us to help pay for these things when we're barely paying for the placements and service to the clients that we have right now. Yep. Trempolo, yep, so that's one of the behavioral health ones. So here, the mechanism, that's why when I say it's not a management problem, or it's not always a management problem, sometimes directors, I mean, they're responsible ultimately for the bottom line of that budget, right? You guys will hold them responsible for that. Sometimes they're unaware of placements at Trempolo ahead of time, and that's, I think, inexcusable. I think they need to be made aware. They need to have systems in place because then they should be in front of the board if they need to be, or their boss, the exec or the administrator if they need to be. And sometimes the placement's appropriate. I mean, every time it occurs, it should be appropriate. But we here, I will tell you, we are working on discharge planning before they even get there. Because facilities, as I'm sure you will understand, want certain placements to keep their business going. And we need to be very aware that, yes, they're not going to be telling us something that's not a benefit to the patient, right? But they're also not moving as fast as we want them to on some things. Because ultimately, the goal is community living, community placements. It's another thing I inherited here in our chronically mentally ill system from Mary Kennedy, who was the director here. Had no placements for our CSP. They were all in their own independent community placements. They worked hard and they staffed up. That's why our staffing levels look good here, but we don't pay for those big placements because eventually the people need to be living in their own community and contributing to their own community independently. That's the right thing to do by the patients. what actually happens when we have these financial issues, we can't cut mandates because we have no control over them. So we don't go after mandated services. We can't stop placements that are necessary or crisis. But what we do is things like hiring freezes. So if we have vacancies, we hold off on positions. We rely on those vacancy savings. If we know there's a high placement and we know we have vacancies, we may not actively recruit for a period of time, 6 months, sometimes a year. I've had positions open for 2 years, waiting for expenses to turn around. We delay on IT and infrastructure modernization. We have had the same system that we were the first county to purchase it from Dane County Mental Health Center. I was a brand new employee here, and I was charged with IT modernization. Now I laugh because I'm like the last person you'd want to ask. I've been promoted to the level of incompetence, like they don't let you do things IT related anymore, right? I think I asked Chris, could you tee up my presentation? Because I don't even know how to find it on the laptop. But we've had the same system. We still have that one since 1997. Increased caseloads per worker. That's what we do when we hold staff vacancies or we do hiring freezes. And then we burn out, and then we have the turnover cycle. The hidden costs to those things, of course, increased jail utilization. How many of you heard sheriff's office say, all of our inmates have mental health issues? All of our inmates have drug and alcohol issues. Yeah, well, it's a direct result of the state doesn't fund human services treatment staffing levels. They end up in the jail, in the corrections system. There was a Medicaid managed care study done in a southern state that's going to escape me now, that showed increased utilization of jails because of managed care for mental health in their Medicaid system. I mean, it is just a fact. Emergency room hospital costs. So we impact the system costs for hospitals because they're spending a lot of time with our individuals in emergency rooms or with our elderly that are on emergency protective placements. Law enforcement time, I explained to you a little bit. School disruption. So we have youth delinquents in schools causing issues for principals, guidance, police school liaison officers. The hidden cost to those could be related back to visible response and cuts in service. We always defer prevention because the state never pays us for prevention. And we all know that preventive care, just like anything in the medical system, human services, health and human services is no different. That's where the money should go. But instead of, forget how we say that, instead of cutting the things to prevent the fire, we're cutting the things that put the fires out because we end up paying for these deep end costs because we don't have the prevention money to do anything about it. I have not recommended prevention programs here, and we're usually in a pretty good place financially. We have some time, sometimes if caseloads are low, that we can use some prevention. Real prevention programs is what I'm talking about. And then the community trust, I mean, across the state, Health and Human Services struggles in certain areas because they're not responsive and they're not preventing, and they feel like the community members sometimes, or family members, are thinking that we're not doing what we are meant to do. Medicaid tool, I won't get into this with you tonight, but other than maybe just the risk part of it. So we go after, for those of you who know me, I will go after every Medicaid dollar that we've ever had. I've been a part of state developing Medicaid programs to benefit counties. And whether or not that's always a great thing to say out loud, it depends, because some of those Medicaid dollars that we grab, it's very complicated and difficult to get them. But we'll go after everyone because that's all we have. But staff have to be hired at times to do that, and so we have to chase those dollars, and we sometimes have to expand a service to be able to get Medicaid revenue, which seems kind of contraindicating. And audit exposure. There are many times when the state's like, well, yeah, we said that you could do that, but now that the Medicaid audit's occurring, we're going to need to claw back some dollars. It's never happened here. We've never had to pay anything back, but Marinette and some other counties around us have had to pay back some significant audit dollars, which I don't know is entirely all of their fault. So what actually needs to happen, and we'll get into this more at the WCA conference, what we need elected officials to do, to Paul's question about have you ever fought back about Lincoln Hills and the rate. We need levy limit modernization in the state of Wisconsin. 100%. I know you know that, but it is such a bigger issue as far as who we serve and what we have to do. We don't have choices in Health and Human Services. We don't have a choice to allow a person to continue to be dangerous in the community. We don't. I mean, we're required by law to respond to that individual, essentially take away their rights, put them in a hospital, and manage them 6 months, a year, maybe longer. And it requires money to do that. So levy growth is not, eliminating the levy limit is not going to happen. So we take the little wins that we can get, but we need something to recognize that mandate growth and costs are going up. So we need a revenue somehow beyond just the property taxpayer. Human Services can do things. Part of this was done for directors, so those slides are still here. But they can do things that they're not right now, which is statewide contract negotiations for providers. So not necessarily the Lincoln Hills, because they're a state correction facility, but other private organizations, we can negotiate with them to create more favorable contracts. It's a tricky balance that we have to do because, of course, we need the providers. So you need providers to be able to make money, right? They have to be able to be sustainable to serve our clients. So we can't cut them too much because otherwise we don't have the placements available. Stabilization fund, possibly. We could advocate for that. That's a human services thing. WCA, of course, I think we have to have a unified message across all 72 counties. I think when Alice and I have been talking about things like data centers, WCA seems to be willing to do things more to collect all 72 counties together. It's difficult to be a counties association when you have 72 counties with varying opinions, but we need to kind of find places to meet in the middle. Legislative alignment, levy reform, we have to do that. I wanted to show you this chart. I don't remember if I've ever shown this to you at budget time, but I've realized after the last budget I'm definitely going to. Because a board member called me and said, wait a minute, you told me the rate went down. And I'm getting calls from my constituents about the tax rate. And this is a very important visual for you to see and understand why state legislators never want to change the levy limit. Because that red line is your county tax levy, flat, right? Like I've showed in previous charts. That orange is the equalized value. So equalized value of your property owners, you've seen your bill, your tax bill. The blue line is the tax rate. So they can come before you and you can go to your constituents and say, we've cut the tax rate. Yeah, well, that's how the math works. That's what I want board members to see because, yeah, you're laughing, but it's true. It's because of the levy limit. We can't raise it. The valuation goes up and the rate goes down. So they aren't going to be willing to change that unless there's a significant change in their perspective of the tax rates, all that matters. Because this chart doesn't change this is a result of the levy limit calculation. This is why it is the way it is. It shows that your property tax rates are less, but the equalized value in most recent years continues to go up. So sometimes those bills go up even though the rates go down, and that's not even to bring into the calculation about schools on that tax bill. But that's just an awareness of the political climate. I don't think we're going to get the state legislature to change that. So we have to go after something else. This gets in what directors can actually do. But we have structural constraints. You've heard us say this before. It's much more of a reality in certain areas where there's mandates, which is human services. It affects other departments, of course, because if Chris wants to add capacity to GIS, he may have to wait a couple of years until the Health and Human Services levy is less dependent on, the mandates shrink. So it affects decisions that we make to other departments that are on the tax levy. History of county funding is a history of mandates outpacing revenue tools. It's a reality. We need to be talking about it, and we need to share the data. We need a new revenue beyond shared revenue reform. We need to provide the data. We need to collaborate as counties. We do some things with Human Services Day at the Capitol. That was Alice's. So we do go and advocate, which is a wonderful thing. But I know I've been there with some counties that are bringing their own message because it affects them much more than the statewide advocacy does. So we have to be better about that. That's the fast, high-level version of county funds and HHS. And you'll get more. I know you're looking forward to it. You'll get the county-wide one next.
Moving on to supervisor reports. Does any supervisor have a report? You have the county administrator's report. We have a couple of appointments. The county administrator would like to have an appointment to the Brillion Library Board, recommending the appointment of Jody Schwarz to fill the vacancy left by the resignation of Tammy Koehler, whose term expires July 1st, 2027. Are there any questions on that?
And mine's broke. Mine's broke. I can't vote.
Someone give me a motion. All right, a motion by Mary, is there a second? By Ann? Okay. Any questions regarding that? If not, please vote your ballot.
Yes. I called Todd earlier today, or I actually called Amy, and he said he would give me like an open mic. My wife was diagnosed with cancer last August. They took most of the month of September and October to decide what to treat her with.
First.
And-
Supervisor Miller, we need to deal with this motion first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
All right, please, you voted your
But you
ballot,
voted
so
yes,
it's,
Joe. We're just trying to
Yeah,
cover you on.
yeah.
Okay.
all right. We passed, yes, 14 yes, 7 absent, so that has been approved. The next appointment is the reappointment of Kevin Fisher, whose term will expire June 30th, 2026, and his new term will expire July 30th, 2029. I need a motion to adopt.
I was gonna say, I don't have that.
Someone give me a
I
motion.
think you voted on all of them.
Yeah, we did. We did? I did not
That's
ask
the way
for
it
that.
was
Okay.
set up.
All right, then I guess
Thank
it's
you.
all
Well,
approved.
should we?
Okay. All right. Now we have an appointment, well, you did that one too, of Lynette Malberg.
It's the way it was set up.
All right, then all three of them were approved. Lynette Malberg was gone to the Zoning Board of Adjustments, and her term will expire June 30th, 2029.
Do you want to confirm that there's no objection to that?
Is there any objection to any of those? Seeing none,
Okay, we just want to make sure that.
all right, they're approved, okay. All right, no, we weren't going to meet in July, so,
Yep, so you just go into,
all right.
we don't have to indicate that at this point anyway.
All right, the next regular meeting will be July. Whether we'll have one or not, you will be notified. So consideration of additional items for the next board meeting. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add? If you do, please let myself know or Todd. And Supervisor Miller, you had something you wanted to address?
Okay, thank you. My hearing aids are about run out, so I'm not hearing very well. I've had them in since probably 4:30 this morning. So, as I said before, my wife had to deal with cancer her second time. And through all of this, I started trying to get as much done with the Veterans Administration. Michelle and Kevin been very helpful. So I'll concentrate on that. Our family was tremendous to get through this. I got kids that live in 5 states out of 10, one deceased. So we're making it through, everybody doing okay. My one son from Texas is still up here, and so we'll be okay. So VA, Michelle got appointments for me, things I should have been doing 60 years ago if they'd have their act together. So I get stuff like, I made an appointment at Grand Chute. I had to go there to make it because we can't get through on the phone. Am I too loud?
No, you're
Okay.
good.
So my neighbor Rick has the same problem. We can't connect. So we go there to get an appointment. That very afternoon, they call me from VA, and that would be on the 26th of May, saying that you have an appointment in Ixonia for your hearing test. I says, 11 o'clock there and 3 o'clock at Grand Chute, it gonna work. It gonna work. So they switched it to Monday, and we went to Menominee. And I had a guy drive me, because I spent some long days, okay? Had a guy drive me. So for 31 minutes, I'm in a booth. I worked at a mill, and we had hearing tests all the time. This particular time, don't sit down. They throw them in your ears, okay? Now when the beep comes up, you have to say the word. You used to press a button. I've got Agent Orange Simpson in here ever since Vietnam. I've never gotten any compensation. We might be getting close. So anyway, say the word. I need some water, man. I need some water. At least 4 times through that 12 minutes. Then the next one, say the word girl. So you got to say the word lake. Same thing, water. We used to be able to press the button. I'm sitting down, okay? Oh, about 12 minutes of that, and gal's outside the tube just taking a recording. And then the last one again is a little more deeper thing. First your left ear and then your right ear. And you got to say yes. You got to say yes. Man, really drained me out. So 31 minutes in there. Let's get out of here. We go home. So I submit my mileage. They had let us know they pay 41 cents a mile, way behind the 77. So the 217 miles, yeah, a week later I got the check. I went and cashed it right away. It was good. We burned it in the bar. So anyway, took it. So the next thing then, last week Thursday, I get a call from a guy in Texas scheduling appointments, paperwork from Indiana for the VA, saying that I have an appointment on the 15th. So this was on Thursday of last week. I have an appointment on the 15th in Xonia. It's down by Oconomowoc. Okay, so that is my, PSTS. Okay, never had that in 60 years. I spent Vietnam killing a lot of gooks because that's what we were trained to do, is kill. We never had one session on how it was to come back into society. When I extended over there, yeah, I did it because I had guys that couldn't leave. I was pretty strong. I made rank pretty good. Obviously, guys got killed. So I did pretty good. I stayed an extra 4 months and 4 days. So out of all of this, that's the only one thing I got is my wife. I met through a guy that flunked out of Sacramento State. He was about a month behind in basic training. Eventually over there, somebody said, hey, there's a guy over there that's looking for a Wisconsin guy. He had some gals take our APO addresses that he flunked out of college and write to, because he got a discharge when his father got killed in an auto accident while he was waiting to come to Nam. Okay? So Peg and I met. 13 and a half months later, we wrote letters. I found the last one that she wrote to me, and we also, the grandkids found the last one I wrote to her 8 days before we got married in '69. So we produced only 10 kids. Had a big party on the 50th anniversary. We got dozens of cards. Joe and Peggy do 50 more. Yeah, we were deeply attached. She was from California. She worked as a G4 as a sophomore in college. Back then it was generals from Washington would tell them, order this, order that, supplies, military uniform. So they would actually have to type out the invoice and do it. She was good at it, okay? She took me horseback riding. We got pictures of that, the first time ever. She had a trained horse, and if I smarted off, she says, do it again. I'll have the horse take the tail and knock your head off. Well, it did. Flashy, yeah. So good memories. She's in a better place. She suffered immensely from December on. One test after another. Let's switch to chemo, what we're doing. Let's do this. Let's take her to Madison, start radiation. She was treated like a used tire, pretty much, you know. And I remember going in to Encircle, AMC, Theta Clark, 5 different times from October emergencies because she had problems with her liver and all of that retained. So they had to start pumping it out every 4 or 5 days, 5.75, 6.75. And it was a matter of sometimes they had to be pretty delicate. They had to get to lay her body right so they didn't injure the other organs. They physically went in and siphoned it out, 4 or 5, 6 hours. And then they had to start putting protein back in because she was getting too weak. So they had to keep her extra hours and put that form of protein back in. So what a ridiculous. So the kids got just buffled. It's like, what are we going to do? What can we can't? It's in doctors' hands, and some fail. So my wife failed on all their treatments, you know. But I've seen boards. Unfortunately, all these centers have like 40 boards. We do it every Friday, and by 7:30, 8 o'clock, 39 of the 40 are all lit up. In other words, people are in treatment, and a lot of people know that they're in treatment rooms. I started seeing a guy that was from Amo every Friday. He'd come in, first 2 weeks, yeah, pretty gay, this, that. All of a sudden, a month later, he came in, he's got a cane. A month later after that, he's in a wheelchair, and the nurse said, hey, how you doing today, Homer? Well, she used to say, I'm better than nothing. What did that mean? His wife had been coming in too, I didn't realize. She died the week before. What a suffering that's going on in this world. Why do we have so much cancer in this country? I've traveled to other countries, my daughter traveled. There's no cancer in Okinawa, there's no cancer in Turkey. You know what I mean? Names others, and we can prove that. There isn't. What are we doing wrong here? Is it our soils? No, is it our sprays? I've got Agent Orange because the 7 chemical companies that were paid to produce it for the company, for the government, we sued them. 441,000 guys sounded sued in 1982. 15 months later, they all denied. They all got off. $180 million, all went to the 16 attorneys we had. We didn't get a dime. So ever since then, the Veterans Administration has been kicking up, taking like me in as patients, rating me, you know what I mean? So someday, I'm waiting on the one for my hearing test. They said 2 to 3 weeks later, which was a month ago yesterday, I have not gotten a mail out of how my hearing test went. I've been probably deaf for 20 years, okay, mostly. So now one yesterday said that in 48 hours, it'll be documented, it'll be sent to your county veteran service officer. And Michelle knows that. She's got me coming in Friday to do some special things, okay? So I commend how good they're finally waking up on this county to do well. We had a real Dudley one back when I got out in '69. He wasn't in his office 6 out of 7 times. You know, I think his last name was Tim. But, and other guys experienced the same thing.
Well, Supervisor Miller, on behalf of the board, we certainly do offer our sympathy. I know how close you and Peggy were.
Yeah, well,
And,
thank you. Yeah, we're, just to let you know, everybody's doing good. We got our family reunion on the 28th, and I guess the rule is bring 2 or 3 items that you want to give away, and then everybody will get like a bid on it, and if they don't get given away, you take them home. Everybody's fine. So there'll be probably 130, 150 people at that. So thank you for letting me speak, and we are survivors.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you
are
for the ice
adjourned.
cream too. And you guys were on the front of it. Are you guys aware with the highway committee? Thank you for, Ronnie helped me carry stuff.